Hi everyone, it's Amir Nooriala, one of the co-CEOs of CTO Information Security and the host of the In Conversation series. Today's guest is a cracker. We've got Elia Zaitsev, a very, very early employee of CrowdStrike, worked his way up over a 12-and-a-half-year career to now be the CTO of CrowdStrike, the 120 billion market cap company with 4 billion of revenue. He's flown in from America for this conversation, and he's going to take us through his career and everything cyber. You're going to love it. Elia, welcome to the interview. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Amir.
My pleasure. Now I'm going to do a little bit uncomfortable moments for you. I'm just going to talk about you in front of you. So just bear with me, just for our viewers who don't know you.
It's my favorite topic, me.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about yourself. You sound like what my wife says about me. So Elia, you started doing a bachelor's and master's degrees in engineering from Cornell. You then did 3 different sales engineer jobs over a 6-year period. And in 2013, you made a decision to join a 2-year-old startup called CrowdStrike. You're still there. It's been, from my simple maths, 12-and-a-half years now that you've been there, and you've worked your way all the way up to being from a sales engineer to the CTO.
Advanced persistent threat.
Yeah. Absolutely. Exactly. Great persistence there. And then for those who are not familiar with CrowdStrike, I'll be amazed if you work in cybersecurity, but just in case you're not, I'm going to give the only salesy bit of this conversation. So according to the Gartner Magic Quadrant for End User Protection, CrowdStrike has been the leader for 5 years now in a row. But I know that Elia will call me out if I just say you do. And on the end device side. So CrowdStrike are also known for their capabilities in areas such as identity, next-gen SIEM, SaaS, and cloud security too as well. So that's the end of the sales bit. We've introduced you, Elia. I thought we could jump into the questions.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. If it's okay, I'm just going to do a bit of a silly question for you. So when I was doing my prep, and yes, I do actually do prep. I know these interviews look very unprofessional, but I do prep. I was looking you up, and there's a lot of YouTube videos that you've been interviewed in, and they've been going back for quite a long period, pretty much at the start of your CrowdStrike career. And it's striking, as your career has progressed, your beard has progressed as well. And so I guess my question is there like a level above this? Is there like a CEO beard that you can get to, or is this where the beard gets tapped out? Like how does this beard work?
Well, I guess, yeah, it's like Samson in the Old Testament. It must be the source of my power. So one other thing happened, actually, coincidentally, shortly after I joined CrowdStrike. I met the woman who's now my wife. Yeah. And prior to meeting her, I had never grown a beard in my life, did not know I was capable, never attempted it. And she told me I had a weak chin and a big forehead. Very, very lovely woman, and insisted that I grow out a beard to balance out my face. Now I was in sales at that point in time, so the requirements were to keep the beard very short and clean and well kept as I'm talking in front of customers. And then two things happened in 2019. One was moving into late 2019, early 2020. One was moving into the CTO organization, which I guess it's a bit of a different calculation there. The longer the beard, the better my Linux skills and programming ability must be. And COVID happened. Yeah. So not as much customer-facing travel. Beard started to get longer. It became an increasing point of conversation, and unfortunately, in various Zoom calls, losing about 5 minutes discussing my beard.
Every call,
And more importantly, my wife really liked it, and she won't let me take it any shorter. I will say I have an informal rule, which is what we call the hand test.
Okay.
I've been traveling for a week, so I'm a little bit overdue for a slight trim right here. But that's about what we target, one hand length.
Well, I'm going to show you a hand because the reason why I've designed this stuff is I have a weak chin as well. So thank you for joining the club with me. And I studied computer science, and we always used to joke that if the professor didn't have like crazy beard, crazy hair, they couldn't be a good professor. It was like a standard you had to have. So thank you for sharing that. So I promise you, everyone, this is not the in-beard conversation. This is about cybersecurity. So let's jump into it. If it's okay, we'll talk a little bit about your career, because I think that's going to be interesting to people. Anytime people see kind of a natural progression of promotions in one place, I think it's fascinating to people to kind of how that thing works. But let's start right at the beginning. You joined CrowdStrike. It was 2 years old. Is that because you're a visionary and you just knew that George was going to build something amazing, or did you just get lucky? Like, what happened?
Well, I think like many things in life, it was a combination of, luck, opportunity, skill, and then later on a little bit of hard work.
Yeah.
So it's fairly long story. I'll give you the abridged version. While I was at my previous employer,
Yeah.
I had met several early folks at CrowdStrike, including some of the co-founders, like George, et cetera.
Yeah.
And that kind of developed a relationship. We were doing some partnership work in their previous jobs at McAfee, my previous employer. So that's what built the initial relationship. And then, CrowdStrike was started. They were in stealth mode for about a year and a half or so, close to 2 years, when they approached me because of that pre-existing relationship, and basically pitched me on coming and joining this startup that nobody knew what they did.
Yeah.
I was following them along, and I know what they did. People talk
Yeah.
about it being like a hackback company and things like that in
Yeah.
the early days, and they made me sign an NDA, and they sent me this couple slide PowerPoint deck
So you
describing.
even didn't know the name of the company?
No, I knew the name of the company,
that
but I had
was
no
it.
idea what they were
doing. Right?
what they were doing. No one
Okay.
knew what they were doing at that time. So signed the NDA. They sent
Right.
me a PowerPoint presentation that describes this new type of endpoint technology they're going to be launching. EDR did not really exist for the most part as a concept. Interestingly enough, I did not have a cybersecurity background at that time.
Right.
But I was a very technical individual, spent a lot of time with computers, et cetera. So understood how they worked, understood how conventional legacy signature based antivirus worked as well, and its myriad shortcomings. So what actually kind of sold it for me, if you will, in this presentation, they described the concept of an indicator of attack, which I think we kind of take for granted. Over a decade later now, it's pretty much table stakes for any modern endpoint security platform. But this idea of not looking at signatures and not even looking at individual atomic, behaviors or indicators, but creating this graph, this tree, if you will, of relationships between behaviors over time. That to me immediately, turned on the light bulb in my head.
Yeah.
Wow, this thing, if you've actually built this, and they assured me it's going to be ready any week.
Oh.
It was more like 6 months, but
Right.
if this was actually going to work, this would really disrupt the market. So, combination of luck. A little bit of luck to have the opportunity. Maybe a bit of skill on my part to recognize the opportunity and see an open door and walk through it.
Take the plunge. Yeah.
And then a lot of hard work over the next 12 and a half years. Yeah.
And so let's summarize that. So pre-revenue, how many employees was CrowdStrike at the time?
I believe my employee number was 45.
45. So employee 45. Product hasn't even launched yet. 0 revenue. And in my notes it says. We're now at it's a public company, market cap of, as of when I did this, I think 2 days ago, 120 billion, 4 billion of revenue. And to put that in kind of league table for the viewers, in terms of pure play cyber companies, Paolo has slightly higher revenue than CrowdStrike, but was founded 6 years before CrowdStrike. And so I think you can see where that graph's going to go and end up. So pretty meteoric. Okay, so that's amazing. Well done on your judgment. It's Royal Ascot this week, so if you've got any tips for the horses, I think everyone would love to get some more judgment from you as well.
Pick the fast one.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't do that on Tuesday. So I thought what we could do for this discussion as the main topic, other than your beard and your career, is the Global Threat Report. So CrowdStrike released that every year. The 2025 CrowdStrike Global Threat Reports come out. And I've collected a few kind of stats from that report. I thought I'd start with that and then jump into some questions.
Sure.
So in terms of stats, CrowdStrike are now tracking 257 different adversaries. And in, I think, 2024 alone, 26 new ones were named. Average time for an e-crime breakout was 48 minutes, but the fastest was 51 seconds. And then of intrusions, 79% of them were malware-free. So relying on the kind of old-fashioned keyboard tactics and stealth for how to penetrate enterprises. So that's kind of setting the scene, the kind of things we're seeing in the report. I've got some questions that are the interesting bits I saw that I want to draw out with you. So the first one is that kind of the stats around adversaries. So what did I say it was? It was 257 adversaries. The report uses a term, I've seen it a few times, I really like the way the report wove into it, which is around enterprising adversaries, which I think is one of the best terms ever. Talking about adversaries working like enterprises, organized, efficient, strategic. So with that in mind, is there something specific, like an incident or a trend that made CrowdStrike think, yeah, adversaries have become like enterprises now?
I don't think it was one single thing. I think it's a trend. It's an evolution that we've been seeing take place for many years.
Yeah.
I don't know if obviously the adversaries are not a homogenous group. I don't know if any of them are fans of classical economics and David Ricardo and
Yeah.
have read The Wealth of Nations. But
Yeah.
what we're actually seeing here is in fact that sort of economic specialization. So, especially in the e-crime space, gone
Yeah.
are the days where you have, not gone, but much rarer now, you have a single group or an organization that is running the entire campaign, if you will. They're breaking it down into their own specialties and chunks. So you may have a ransomware as a service operator. You may rent infrastructure from a botnet network. You can again purchase different malware families. You can purchase exploits on the open market in the dark web, so to speak. So you can have an individual with relatively minimal to no cybersecurity experience come and procure from various different sources all the things they need, legitimate credentials from a credential broker, get that malware, get that ransomware, use rented out C2 infrastructure.
Yep.
And at the same time, as these organizations, these criminal organizations have become essentially, they've adopted, as you said, enterprise concepts of like software as a service, right? They're service providers now. Their customers expect support, customer support. There's live chat systems that they can go and get help with, and they can open up tickets for help, etc. So yeah, we're very much seeing them increasingly adopt these business-like trends as they seek to monetize and make their operations more efficient.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. And I think it's a pretty consistent feedback we're getting from both the vendors as well as the client base that we serve as well. On that topic of just kind of efficiency and professionality of these adversaries, one of the other themes in the report is generative AI and how generative AI is a force multiplier for criminals. And the report talks about, and by the way, if you haven't seen the report, it's on the website. It's very easy to get to. I do recommend everyone have a look at it. And it's free as well. Most importantly, we all like a freebie. It is free. A bit like my Save Your t-shirt as well. I love a freebie. So in the report, it talks about nation states, e-crime groups, hacktivists. They're all using Gen AI as a force multiplier now, and like you said, off-the-shelf chatbots, those kind of things to scale their operations. In your role as CTO, you must see the whole gamut of everything that's possible. What's the most surprising or creative use of Gen AI that you've seen?
I would have to say it's probably the way that they're using the latest generation of deepfake technology to turbocharge social engineering campaigns. I think the earliest uses we saw of adversaries using Gen AI started with the text modalities. They were using it for very well constructed phishing emails. You can't now look for broken grammar and poor spelling and things of that nature. They're writing better. These large language models write better than you or I probably can.
Completely.
But then it progressed to voice-based deepfakes, where they used sample audio of executives that are available online to create very convincing sounding voices of the impersonating these individuals, calling in and asking for a password reset or wire. CFOs asking for money to be wired out to some supplier. But we're now even seeing it go a step further, where they're doing video-based deepfakes. And I'm not even talking about a static pre-recorded video. We've seen them now doing things like real-time face swapping with, again, executives impersonating executives in the company. And it's not just Hollywood sci-fi. I've actually talked to customers that have had this being attempted.
Quality that it's believable.
Absolutely, we did it as a bit of a joke as an educational thing for the company, but we had an internal all hands, a virtual all hands call. I think at the beginning of this year or the end of last year. And just as a little bit of a gag, but also a bit of education for the company, I took some publicly available video footage of George, our CEO.
Okay.
And they did a Zoom interview with me, except I had my face and my voice in real time swapped with George's face and voice.
Wow.
And it was very convincing. The only thing that made it stand out was the fact that George doesn't have a gigantic beard.
I was
going to
say the beard. I thought
I guess I don't have enough GPU horsepower at home to get rid of the beard. But if I shaved it, it'd be pretty convincing. So I think that's impressive, but also, frankly, a bit terrifying.
Yeah. By the way, anyone who's wondering about Gen AI video models, the biggest thing they struggle with is people who shave their head by choice. Not, they just can't seem to handle that one yet.
Does that mean you're deepfake proof, or you can't do the deepfakes?
It means that it's not quite at the standard I want it to be to make me look how I want to look.
You're trying to generate hair for yourself,
Exactly.
is what you're saying. Okay, let's just be transparent and say it.
Exactly. Flipping the question, do you think, and you have tens of thousands of customers, do you think on a defensive side we're keeping up with using Gen AI to bat those threats away?
So actually, this is a rare area of optimism I think I have here in cybersecurity. I think this is not really about keeping up with the adversaries. I think this is a unique kind of once in a generation opportunity to get ahead of the adversary.
Yeah.
Normally there's a tremendous amount of asymmetry in cybersecurity, being the defender.
Yeah.
Right. You've got an attacker who can be persistent and well resourced, and they can make many attempts to penetrate your organization, and they only have to be correct once, right? To get in and achieve actions on objectives. The defender typically has a huge challenge there.
Yeah.
Where they can be right 99.9% of the time, and that one time that they fail, it's potentially game over.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been typically the scenario, if you will, in cybersecurity. And there's always all these tremendous costs that you have to weigh as far as true positive versus false positive, and dealing with all the noise and a real shortage of human labor and expertise. AI, in particular generative AI, really gives us an opportunity, I think, for one of the first times to leverage a technology that flips that asymmetry. So I'll kind of give you maybe a concrete example.
I would love an example, yeah.
So one of the latest capabilities we've released on our platform under our generative AI product called Charlotte AI is a detection triage model, an agent, if you will.
Okay.
And it operates fully autonomously. There's no human intervention required, and it will look at alerts coming into the platform, originally focusing on endpoint, but we've expanded that to include identity-based detections now as well. And it triages those alerts and determines them to be a true positive or false positive.
Right.
We actually developed and even benchmarked this system by taking all the human work that our Falcon Complete managed service team has been creating with hundreds of, maybe thousands of analysts, tens of millions of endpoints. Goldmine for creating these generative AI models, but not just creating them, we can actually measure their effectiveness. So we've publicly stated that the model is almost 99% accurate. And when I say accuracy here, I should clarify, it means 99% of the time, the result of that generative AI-based triage agent exactly matches that of the expert human analyst.
Right.
But there's one big difference. That human analyst, on average, takes 5 minutes to triage the detection. Yeah. And they go on vacation. They sleep.
And they sleep. Yeah.
They get sick, etc. All the things that humans suffer from.
Yeah.
The generative AI-based version of this triages the detection in roughly a second, nearly instantaneously, and it runs 24/7. Yeah. And you could scale it up as much as you want, and it never takes a break. So this has some pretty exciting implications if you think about it. For example, in detection engineering, going back to what I mentioned before, because of that historical asymmetry, because of alert fatigue, et cetera, dealing with false positives, you've had to make sacrifices as a defender, as a technology provider like us. Yeah. If we figure out that there's some new type of behavioral logic that is only 50% accurate, typically you wouldn't want to give a customer alerts in their console that are wrong half the time. But the flip side of that is, well, it's also right half the time. So it's you're kind of throwing out the baby with the bathwater. But if I have a system that can determine if that's a true positive or a false positive almost 99% of the time in a second, well, why wouldn't I take a little bit of a broader look at some of these detection capabilities that I have, knowing that it's okay if it's 50% wrong. I can triage that out immediately and then focus on just the high quality true positive. So that allows us to kind of flip that asymmetry, if you will.
Yeah, so you kind of answered the question I was going to ask you there. So it sounds like you're talking about agentic AI kind of SOC analysts, and they've got a 99% accuracy rate. And I was going to say to you, at what point, linking back to what you said previously about it just takes one breach, at what point is 99% good enough? Is it 99.9? But what you're saying is you're not eliminating everyone. There's still going to be people there.
Oh, absolutely. So this is a common. So if we're talking about the humans versus the machines, so to speak, I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a combination of the two. Yeah. We're certainly not at the place, and I don't think we will be for quite some time, for years, where we'll see all of cybersecurity being outsourced to machines. Yeah. I'd actually like to come back to that in a second, but I'll just kind of finish this statement.
Yeah.
What we're doing is we're targeting the level 1, the level 2 type work, if you will, and as a result, we're freeing up the human analysts to go tackle all the other higher order, more challenging problems, getting away from the repetitive rote tasks and into the more creative things like threat hunting, for example. So we're helping eliminate the skills and the labor gap, not eliminating the humans themselves. There's plenty of work, and there will be for quite some time. Going back for a second to that point I wanted to make, one of the things I think people need to understand: cybersecurity is not chess or StarCraft or Jeopardy. These are areas where we've seen for many years artificial intelligence destroy humans in capability and completely surpass them. But there's a difference between chess and StarCraft and Go and all these other video games and cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is much more like trying to build driverless cars, which we're making progress in there, but it's been literally decades. We've been promised driverless cars. Well, driverless cars are a lot more like cybersecurity. Sure, there are rules, right? There's rules of the road, like there's rules in chess, but I can't play a chess match where I just start ignoring the rules. I'm sure you've seen a driver accidentally or maybe intentionally go the wrong way down a one-way street. That's what cybersecurity is like. There are rules to these systems, but we have determined human adversaries on the other end of that keyboard that are trying to break those rules. So you look at generative AI-based systems, they're not truly creative. They're able to replicate what other smart humans have demonstrated through training data in the past, but then automated at a very high speed and effective rate. But there's always going to be, by definition, in cybersecurity, something new that no human, let alone an artificial intelligence machine, has seen before. So because they lack that human creativity, we're necessarily going to need a human threat defender on the other end. It's kind of like a spy versus spy situation. So I think what you'll increasingly see is a bit of an arms race where adversaries are going to leverage generative AI technologies to get faster and try to overwhelm the defenders, but the defenders will be able to leverage their own suite of generative AI technologies to basically balance it out.
Someone's still directing it as well.
And then at the end of the day, when all the machines are busy battling each other in a repetitive fashion, you've got the talented human defender and the crafty human adversary going at it.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, and look, I'm a bit of a chess player, and one of the things they say about building AI to win games, the first is that depending on the number of possibilities in a game, I can't remember the exact term, but it's like a known or an unknown game that they call it. So something like checkers only has a limited amount of possibilities of what you can do, while chess has enough variations that it's considered very hard and like an unknown thing.
I think mathematically there are more permutations of chess games than there are particles in the universe, which means by definition you can't enumerate them all. There's not enough matter in the universe to do it.
But what you're saying is, but it still has rules.
Correct.
But with this, in cyber, there aren't rules.
There's still patterns you can find and train and optimize on and make decision trees. That's how chess AI works. They don't need to know every possible game. They need to know the 50 most likely variations given the current configuration of the pieces. But cybersecurity, adversary comes in, just smashes all the pieces off the board and goes off and does something else.
Exactly. Or just convinces an employee internally to do something really stupid. That's fascinating. Next part of the report I want to jump into, and that's why I'm referencing my notes. Cloud intrusions and identity abuse. So in the report I saw it said there's a 20% increase in cloud intrusions, and 35 of those involve valid account abuse. Now, as an interviewer, you're not supposed to lead the person to what the answer is, but my take of this was it suggests a shift towards stealth, persistence, that kind of thing. What does that trend say for you in terms of 26% increase in cloud intrusions and 35% of those involving valid account abuse?
So I think it's good, before we go specifically into cloud identity, there's a bit of an overarching point or topic here, which is that adversaries are becoming increasingly multi-domain, or rather attacks are becoming cross-domain in nature. So no longer are you focusing on just the endpoint. And it's not even a question of just looking at cloud or just looking at identity. Adversaries are combining all these different tactics together and they're merging them. So, for example, identity is in fact often a crucial component of cloud-based attacks. They are compromising highly privileged service accounts or control plane accounts to get access to cloud infrastructure. One of the things that attackers have realized is that in many organizations, all these different security domains, as we call them, from the cross-domain attacks,
Yeah.
they have different tools and different platforms and sometimes even different teams that are responsible for them.
Yeah.
So as an adversary, if you can start to jump between these different domains, if you think about, cybersecurity in some sense as a race or a chase, really, right?
Yeah.
Adversaries getting in, initial access to a system, they're trying to break out and move laterally, and you've got defenders running after you, if you will, trying to catch up and kick you out of the network. As they start to traverse those different domains and boundaries, that gives them an opportunity to shake their tail, if you will. So that's one big theme. The use of identities in particular, this actually dovetails also with another statistic that I think you mentioned at the beginning, which is the increasing use of non-malware based attacks.
Yeah, it was over 77%. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
some of those are referring to living off the land techniques, where you're using like built-in technologies in the operating system and avoiding malware. But a lot of them increasingly, just like in cloud, but also on premise, they're leveraging legitimate credentials, right? Either through social engineering or just purchasing them off the dark web through these credential brokers, going back to the enterprising adversary topic that we spoke about earlier. So this is all part of how they're evolving.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Next one, I want to touch upon phishing and social engineering, so kind of voice phishing. And when I did my research again, the report stated something insane: a 442% growth in phishing operations between the first and second half of 2024. So just in a 6-month period, a 442% increase. Now, I did this research as I was putting these questions together last week. On the weekend, I was subjected to a phishing attack, weirdly. So we have a corporate expense card, like most companies do, and I got a call on a Saturday from someone pretending to be like an operations analyst at the expense card company, saying, hey, someone's just booked something. It's Saturday morning, very unusual for you. You don't seem to do a weekend on this expenditure on this card. Can we just confirm whether you did it or not? And I was like, oh, that's very good, good of them. No, it absolutely was not me. It's Saturday morning. I'm not buying anything. And I said, brilliant. Okay, we've just frozen your account. We're going to send you an email, reset your credentials to unlock your account.
Yep.
And obviously, when you're a CEO of a cybersecurity company, you are petrified to click on a link, because the amount of internal kind of phishing exercises we do and then tell people off, our standards are very, I'm like, okay, now I'm getting worried. They rung me on a weekend. They're going to send me an email. It had the logo. It had a spoof domain of the card. I then looked at the email sending it. They were domains that were slightly off, like one extra letter, that kind of thing. And I was like, okay, wow, I am being targeted really, really intelligently here on a weekend. I'm off guard. The email followed immediately. They gave me a reference number on the phone. They said reference number, and there'd be an email just to make sure it's the same thing. And thankfully I figured it out. I didn't do it, and I let the expense card company know. And then I screenshotted it all. I wrote a whole essay for all of our employees who have expense cards, saying, be aware, we're obviously being targeted as a company for a phishing campaign. Please don't fall for it. And then today, one of our employees replied 2 days later to my message saying, hey, I just got a phishing call. Everyone should be aware of it. Here's the details. Didn't even read my bloody message. So first of all,
hey, at least they're paying attention to their phishing training. Right?
Yeah, exactly. They haven't moved on to phishing. So absolutely believe this 442%, because just since I wrote that question, 2 of our employees have been attacked with the same one. And I also have seen people don't read the alerts that you give them to prepare them that this is going to happen as well. So this stat is incredibly believable for me. Again, though, I might have led your answer. What do you think has led to this massive rise? Like 442% in a 6-month period? That's insane.
Sure. So I think traditionally we would see a lot of these campaigns, implemented through like SMS type, phishing attacks, etc. But there is a emotional quality to a voice-based attempt at attack. You can build human rapport with your target. You can take advantage of a sense of urgency. If an unknown number texts me, I'm probably not going to pay attention to it. If the same number calls me back multiple times, I'm going to pick up because I'm worried that there's some sort of emergency. Someone's been hurt or injured, etc. So there's that emotional aspect to it, certainly that I think is more effective. Now, historically, again, there was a big cost to an adversary. It's difficult for them to utilize these techniques. Number one, because in many cases, a lot of these adversaries are operating out of non-English native language speaking countries, for example. So the accents, the grammar, the colloquialisms weren't convincing. And also, if you just think about, again, like there's a lot of economics at play here. I can mass send out an SMS message to thousands of numbers, but historically, if I wanted to try to do social engineering via voice, that's a one-to-one relationship, if you will.
Yeah.
Going back to what we discussed earlier with Gen AI and adversaries using deepfake technologies, et cetera, I can now apply that same kind of bulk technique to voice-based attacks. And I don't have to worry about accents or anything like that. So I can have a Gen AI language model write the script and then generate the convincing human audio version of it, and then send that out en masse. So very effective technique for adversaries.
I've seen one Gen AI voice model where it doesn't just, it's got the, obviously you see the translation, real-time translation is amazing when you see it, but I've seen one where you can pick the type of English accent that the model generates. Like it's a call center in Ireland or it's a call center in India. They'll actually make an accent for it as well, which is absolutely incredible.
You can even combine these and do it real time. So it's not just like voice transformation and it's not just static pre-recorded messages.
Yeah.
If I combine a text-to-speech and a speech-to-text system, as a human responds, that gets converted from audio into text, fed into a large language model that then creates the appropriate response, and then that text response gets generated into an audio, and this can happen in essentially real time.
Yeah,
and it sounds like you're having a phone conversation with a human.
Exactly. So, great segue. With that in mind, how do you think, and you must speak to clients every week. You're in London right now. I know you're in Sweden. Yes, I'm sure you're flying around meeting clients all the time. How do you think organizations should rethink training and detection in light of those kind of really scary statistics and examples we've just been through?
Sure. Well, from the training perspective, we have to get to training models that are ongoing, dynamic, and contextually based. Doing that once a year, annual, or maybe one-time onboarding course, that's not really effective. People don't retain a lot of that information, and it seems kind of academic, if you will, when they're doing it. However, when you're actually getting a phishing email, right? Hopefully a test, an exercise, and you have that sense of shame and embarrassment for falling for it, and then you're immediately redirected to training on that specific topic right then and there, and having that occur on more than one occasion, that tends to build a bit more of effective, muscle memory. From a defender's perspective, I mean, one, we have to take kind of a similar context. It's got to be moving away from static, brittle types of detection capabilities. It's got to be real-time, behavior-based, dynamic, contextually aware. Specifically on, if we focus on some of the vishing and other Gen AI-based type attacks, that's scary on some level. But the other thing to remember is that it's a modification of something that we've been dealing with as an industry for a long time. So yes, they're using Gen AI to increase the effectiveness, the click-through rates, if you will. But at the end of the day, it's not a fundamentally new type of cybersecurity tactic, right? Or an adversary tradecraft. So the existing investments and technologies that vendors like us have been bringing to the market here, they're effective, but you have to implement them. So concepts like, in particular, around identity security, I think that's a really key takeaway point. Probably the best way to defend against some of these new types of Gen AI-based attacks is to really focus and double down on identity security, so that I can look at doing things like MFA step-ups, particularly with risk-based context. So sure, this legitimate credential may have been compromised, but it's being utilized with a system that doesn't have endpoint security running that I would expect. It's accessing systems it doesn't normally access. Wrong time of day. Wrong GeoIP location. Impossible time travel. We call it when you're logging in 1 minute in the West Coast in the US and the next minute in the UK. These are all technologies that exist that vendors like ourselves have been investing in, and if implemented, are quite effective at mitigating these attacks. They may not stop the employee from clicking on the link, but they prevent the compromised credential from being able to be leveraged to allow the adversary to achieve their objectives.
Yeah, that makes all perfect sense. And we've done a little bit of a sales pitch here in those questions. I'm going to give one Sapio sales pitch, so apologies to everyone. We do run a managed service on security awareness training, and it does exactly what Ilya's described in terms of tailored phishing campaigns, training off the back of it. And we're about to launch phishing and smishing as well as part of it. So that's my one sales pitch for Sapio. Apologies. The last bit of the report I wanted to cover, I think, is a very topical one. And it's around what the report calls the China Nexus activity and insider threats. And in terms of the stat I've got here, it's that there's a 150% increase in China-linked activity. Some of that activity involves Gen AI generated fake resumes and LinkedIn profiles. And specifically from the famous Chelima group, who are the North Korean state-sponsored group. If anyone is not aware of that, Chelima means it's the name of a mythical winged horse in Korean mythology. So the famous Chelima group,
like a Pegasus.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah, and I believe that CrowdStrike actually named the group after that. That group, so North Koreans have got a 40% increase, specifically just their state-sponsored Chelima group. So 150% increase in China-linked activity. The North Korean state-sponsored 40% increase, and they are using Gen AI generated fake resumes and LinkedIn profiles. Can you give us a bit more detail around that? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one, and the North Korean actors in particular are interesting in the context of their motivation. So typically when we look at defining an adversary as being like a nation state versus a e-crime organization, one of the common, but as I'll mention in a second, imperfect delineations there is that the e-crime organizations tend to be focused on more financial-based motivations, and the nation-state organizations are focusing on espionage and geopolitical tensions and things of that nature. There is a bleed over, though. In general, we see, for example, nation states maybe contracting out to an e-crime organization, but the North Korean actors in particular, you have to understand the context of the crippling sanctions, the economic sanctions that they've been under for many years now. They have a real scarcity of hard currency. So we actually see a tremendous amount of e-crime type activity stemming from the North Korean actors as they seek to essentially raise money for the regime. So one of the long-standing campaigns they've been doing has been focused on stealing cryptocurrency, for example, for that reason. But the example you mentioned specifically with the famous actor, famous Chelima, it's kind of a twofold objective there. So they're using these Gen AI systems, one, to create the fake resumes and the LinkedIn profiles. They're actually also using them to help answer questions as they do interviews with Western companies, typically information technology companies, where they're pretending to be obviously not a North Korean-based individual, someone based in the country that the company is operating in. They use those Gen AI tools to pass the interview. They've actually been setting up laptops. They get these laptops shipped to them by their employers, and they've been setting them up in these basically laptop farms where they've got KVM, like Pi KVM systems hooked up to them, and then they're remotely interacting with these laptops, these corporate issued laptops from North Korea, and they're doing it for two reasons. One, espionage, right? Get insider access into these IT technology companies, which could be used later on for things like ransomware, for example, or just IP theft. But they're also actually collecting paychecks, and they really do want these paychecks. They're taking these paychecks and they're muling it back home to the regime to help.
So actually doing legitimate work as well.
I would assume in some cases a little bit, maybe, if they want to keep those paychecks coming.
Exactly.
So we've seen this at an increasingly large scale. We've actually developed some capabilities to identify these. So we've been notifying organizations when we've been discovering telltale signs that they have these North Korean actors operating as employees. And we've actually even identified and detected on more than one occasion them applying for jobs at CrowdStrike. We've got some fun videos. I don't think we could post them online, but some fun videos of us doing interviews with these adversaries, because we know that they're North Korean in origin. So maybe we mess around with them.
That's brilliant. I like that. Okay. I was going to ask how you differentiate between two, but you talked about that delineation of state-sponsored versus e-crime.
It is a blurry line, though, and I guess maybe just one more thing I didn't touch on there. The motivation is a big factor, but also looking at the types of tooling, the sophistication, the speed. E-crime in many cases, they want to do a smash and grab, right? They're not there. They're not there for the long haul. They want to get the money, so to speak, and move on to the next victim. Whereas in a nation state campaign, oftentimes the intent is to be slow and stealthy and persistent and just build access for future needs later on. So that's one of the other distinctions there.
Okay, brilliant. I guess what I would like to wrap up then, last question, is a lot of times in these interviews we interview the kind of the founder, the CEO of the company, and they talk a lot about their journey of starting a business, that kind of thing. But the majority of CISOs, or the majority of people who work in cybersecurity, aren't actually founders. They're employees like yourself and myself. And so for someone looking to get into cybersecurity or progress their career, I think the journey that we talked about at the start, and then the way you've been speaking incredibly articulated, in an articulate manner about the topic of cybersecurity and everything that's happening in the market would be inspiring to everyone watching. So what advice would you give to someone early in their cyber career, or maybe even looking to enter the market from a more just technology broad kind of background? They want to move into cyber. That kind of person, they're looking at yourself going, wow, he picked the winner, 12 and a half years. He was a sales engineer on the ground. He's now CTO. What advice do you have in general in terms of what kind of roles to do, what kind of companies to look at, or is it just get in the industry and get your feet wet? Like, what's your view?
Great question. And yeah, I'll point out, as I think I said at the beginning, I did not have a cybersecurity background when I entered when I joined CrowdStrike. So I wouldn't let that, to the audience who's interested in that career, but maybe doesn't have that background expertise. It's not a prerequisite. You can, get in. I think for me personally, and this may not apply to everyone, it was always based on my passion for the technology. So as I mentioned, I chose, CrowdStrike chose me to an extent, but I also took the opportunity because I was so interested in how the technology worked. And one of the common questions I would get over the years as I progressed with the company is, especially as we got bigger and bigger, I joined also in part because I like working at small startup companies, and now we're a relatively large company. And people ask me, why do you stay at CrowdStrike? And part of that is because we've evolved from not just an endpoint security company, but to a full security platform, as you mentioned at the beginning. And for me, someone who's passionate about technology, I'm a nerd at the end of the day. I'm a geek. Well, I think the good ones are. Right? It's given me an opportunity to continuously grow and evolve and learn on my end. So that's part of the reasons why I love working at CrowdStrike. I started in endpoint security like the company did, but I've been able to learn and grow about all these other fields like identity and cloud and generative AI, et cetera. So that keeps me mentally engaged. That keeps me excited and passionate about what I do. And I think the takeaway is, if you're excited and passionate about what you do, about your work, it shows in the quality of your work and in the way others perceive your abilities.
Absolutely.
You'd much rather be, if you're a sales engineer, for example, you want to be working at a company selling a technology that you actually believe in, because your customers are going to very easily they'll easily tell if you're 100%. Actually emotionally invested in what you're selling and you have a sincere belief in its ability versus you're just there for a paycheck.
Completely agree. I actually started my career as a sales engineer at Cisco. Completely agree with everything you're saying. I just want to wrap it up by just thanking Elia. Not only, we're talking about a CTO here of a publicly listed company, 4 billion of revenues. It's these kind of people don't come and just talk on camera or all of the time. So incredibly grateful for that. But the most important thing is, we're in London. We're in a tiny little podcast room. There is a heat wave, and because of the issues with sound, we've turned the air conditioning off as well. So just thank you for doing this, putting up with all the questions, and not just saying to me, can you just shut up? I need to get out of the room. I'm too hot. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I don't think I'm too sweaty, but if I do look sweaty, it's because of the air conditioning, not because of
the grilling
stressful questions.
Exactly. And your hair can hide it anyway. I can't even hide the sweat. So I'm sure my head's shining. But thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Amir.
Cheers.
It's been a pleasure.